It was a quiet Saturday morning in the neighborhood of Oak Ridge, Missouri, the kind of morning where the air felt fresh, the birds performed an unwritten symphony, and the entire world seemed to hum in perfect balance. Rows of perfectly mowed lawns and pastel-colored houses lined Maple Lane, a typical suburban street where neighbors greeted each other with polite nods, but rarely exchanged more than a few words. Jordan Price had lived in Oak Ridge for just over 3 months. At 32, he had a stable job as a remote software engineer for a tech firm based out of Chicago. A proud Missouri native, Jordan had grown up in a busier part of St. Louis. Tired of the city noise and seeking a little more space and calm, he had purchased the modest, 2-story home at 306 Maple Lane. A fixer-upper, sure, but with good bones, a quiet yard, and friendly enough neighbors, or so he thought. That morning, Jordan was feeling particularly productive. With a hot cup of coffee in his hand and his favorite Spotify playlist echoing from a wireless speaker, he walked into his garage and pulled out the lawnmower he had bought a few weeks earlier. It was bright red, electric, and brand new. He took a moment to admire the machine before rolling it onto the lawn. It was precisely 9 a.m. Across the street, in a house adorned with American flags, seasonal wreaths, and a carefully painted white picket fence, Susan Hargrove sat sipping her tea. Susan was 62, retired from teaching American history at the local high school. She prided herself on knowing everyone on the street and keeping the neighborhood spirit alive. She organized block parties, ran the Oak Ridge Facebook group, and kept a very detailed log of suspicious activity, which, incidentally, included anything that didn't look like it belonged in a Norman Rockwell painting. When Jordan had moved in, Susan had watched him closely. Not overtly hostile, never saying anything openly rude, but always with a look. That subtle squint, the way her lips pursed slightly when she saw him working in his yard or bringing groceries in late at night. She hadn't welcomed him like she had other newcomers. She hadn't even brought over a pie. To her, Jordan didn't quite fit the Oak Ridge mold. He was younger. He was single. He worked from home and rarely socialized. But above all, Susan's unease had less to do with Jordan's lifestyle and more to do with her deeply rooted, though never admitted, prejudice. She would never call herself racist. She had, after all, once voted for a black city council member. But something about Jordan mowing his lawn that morning, his relaxed smile, his confidence, his presence, triggered something in her. As the lawnmower roared to life, Susan's eyes narrowed. She picked up her phone. Within minutes, she was dialing 911. 911, what's your emergency? Came the voice on the other end. Yes, I'd like to report a disturbance, Susan said in a trembling voice that was more performative than concerned. There's a man, I don't recognize him, in my neighbor's backyard with a machine. He's being aggressive. Loud. I think he's trespassing. Ma'am, do you believe he's a threat to you or anyone else? I don't know, she replied quickly. He looks suspicious. Can you describe the individual? Yes, she said, pausing only briefly. He's African American. Tall, wearing a black hoodie. I'm not sure if he lives there. I'm really scared. Please send someone right away. The dispatcher calmly assured her that officers would be dispatched and hung up. Jordan, completely unaware of the drama unfolding across the street, continued mowing his lawn with methodical precision. He had no idea his very existence had just been reported as a threat. 10 minutes later, a police cruiser slowly rolled down Maple Lane. Jordan noticed the car immediately. Living in America as a black man, you develop a sixth sense for the presence of police. But he didn't panic. He had done nothing wrong. He didn't even slow down until the cruiser stopped in front of his house and 2 officers stepped out. Good morning, one of them said, walking toward him. Can we speak with you for a moment? Jordan turned off the lawnmower, took out his earbuds, and looked at the officers with calm but cautious eyes. Sure. Everything okay? We received a call about a disturbance. A possible trespassing situation? Jordan blinked. I live here. This is my house. Do you have ID to prove that? Jordan raised an eyebrow. You're kidding, right? I'm mowing my own lawn. Just procedure, sir. Jordan exhaled, slowly and deliberately, and walked toward his porch, where his wallet lay on the patio table next to his coffee. He handed over his driver's license and utility bill. The officers scanned the documents, glanced at each other, and nodded. All checks out, one said. Sorry for the inconvenience. We had to respond to the call. Jordan looked past them towards Susan's window, where the curtain was now completely open and her pale face peeked through. Inconvenience, Jordan said, voice calm but laced with steel. Someone called the cops on me for mowing my own lawn. That's not an inconvenience. That's profiling. The officers looked slightly uncomfortable. We're just doing our job. Sure, Jordan said. But maybe next time, consider why someone would call you in the first place. They nodded again and left. Jordan returned to his lawn, but the vibe had shifted. His music no longer felt upbeat. His peaceful Saturday had been punctured by a reality he had hoped he could escape by moving here. Across the street, Susan stood behind her curtain, gripping her phone tightly, her heart racing, not from fear, but from something deeper. Embarrassment? Guilt? No, she wasn't ready to admit those feelings yet. But this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. By Sunday morning, the incident with the police had already woven itself into the quiet gossip stream of Maple Lane. In Oak Ridge, things traveled fast, especially when Susan Hargrove was involved. After the officers had left Jordan's property the previous day, Susan had opened her laptop and logged into the Oak Ridge Neighborhood Watch Facebook group. With a few keystrokes and a carefully worded post, she began to frame the story in her favor. Scary moment on Maple Lane today. A strange man in a hoodie was seen operating loud machinery in a neighbor's backyard. Police were called. Everyone, please remain alert and report suspicious activity. We must protect our neighborhood. The post was vague enough to avoid any clear accusations, yet charged enough to spark comments. Within minutes, the replies poured in. That's terrifying, Susan. Was he arrested? Oh no. I hope the police are taking this seriously. Something's been off on that street lately. I've noticed different cars parked there, too. Not everyone bought into the hysteria, though. A few neighbors who had actually met Jordan in passing commented with skepticism. I think that man actually lives there. He's always working in his yard. Let's not jump to conclusions. Just because someone looks different doesn't mean they don't belong. But those voices were quickly drowned out in the thread by speculation and coded language, phrases like keeping the area safe and neighborhood standards. Jordan had no idea about the online post until later that day, when his neighbor, Carla Morris, a Latina nurse who lived 3 doors down, rang his doorbell with her 2 small dogs tugging on their leashes. Hey, she said, her tone friendly but laced with concern. Did you see what's going around the Oak Ridge Watch group? Jordan raised an eyebrow. No. Should I have? She hesitated. It's about you, I think. Susan posted something. Sketchy. She didn't name you, but it's obvious. She said a strange man in a hoodie was in someone's yard and the police came. Jordan leaned against the doorframe, arms folded. Well, he said with a dry chuckle, guess that strange man was me. Carla frowned. I'm sorry. That's ridiculous. You were just mowing your lawn. I saw you from my kitchen window. Yeah, but in her world, I'm suspicious because I exist. There was a pause. Carla wanted to say more, but her dogs were pulling, and her toddler was calling from the stroller. If you need anything, let me know. For real. I appreciate that, Jordan said sincerely. Thanks, Carla. That night, Jordan sat at his kitchen table scrolling through the Facebook post. He didn't comment. He didn't react. He simply read every word, every comment, every microaggression cloaked in concern. He'd seen this kind of thing before, in the city, in college, even in the workplace. But he had hoped Oak Ridge would be different. Apparently not. But Jordan wasn't the type to let things slide. He believed in standing up, with grace, with evidence, and with a strategy. He opened his laptop and clicked over to his home surveillance system. He had installed cameras when he moved in, not because he felt unsafe, but because he liked tech and wanted to stay ahead of anything that might happen. There it was, crystal clear footage of him rolling out his lawnmower, checking the battery, and beginning his routine, time-stamped, peaceful, with zero signs of aggression. Even better, one of his side cameras had caught a full shot of Susan peeking through her window, phone in hand, then walking away with a smug expression. Jordan downloaded the footage and saved it. He had a plan. The next day, he emailed the video to the Oak Ridge Neighborhood Watch admin, along with a short message. "Hello. This video shows the moment police were called on me for mowing my own lawn. I live at 306 Maple Lane. Perhaps we should be more careful about the narratives we spread in this group. Jordan Price." He didn't add anything else. He didn't have to. By the following morning, the post had been deleted. The comment thread, gone. And in its place, a new post by the group admin, a woman named Linda, who lived at the far end of the street. Let's remember to verify facts before jumping to conclusions. We are a community. Let's treat each other as such. No names. No apology. But the tone had shifted. Susan, meanwhile, was fuming. Her narrative had been challenged, her assumptions exposed. Still, she clung to the belief that she had acted in good faith. The next confrontation didn't take long. It happened on Wednesday evening as Jordan was unloading groceries from his car. Susan, dressed in a pastel cardigan and khaki pants, walked across the street with purpose. "Jordan," she called out, her voice tight. He looked up from his trunk, calmly placing a carton of eggs into a reusable bag. "Yes, I don't appreciate being accused publicly of false reporting," she said. "I was just doing my duty as a concerned resident." Jordan shut the trunk, turned, and looked her square in the eye. "Calling the police on your neighbor for mowing his lawn isn't duty. It's discrimination." Susan's cheeks flushed. "Excuse me. I have the video. I live here. You watched me. You called 911 and lied. Then you tried to turn the neighborhood against me." "I didn't lie," she snapped. "You were." "I was mowing," Jordan interrupted, his voice calm. "In broad daylight. On my property. What part of that justified calling the cops?" She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. "I'm not here to make trouble, Miss Hargrove," he said. "But if you ever pull something like that again, I won't just post a video. I'll file a report for a false emergency call." Her eyes widened. "That won't be necessary." "I hope not," Jordan said, grabbing his bags and walking toward his front door. "Have a good evening." Susan stood there, frozen on the sidewalk, the weight of public embarrassment settling in. For the first time, her authority had been challenged, and with proof she couldn't deny. Behind her, several other neighbors peeked out from windows or over fences, having heard bits of the exchange. The rumor mill turned again, this time with a different flavor. The story was changing. So was the street. Thursday came in with a slow, hazy heat, wrapping Oak Ridge in a sleepy tension. The birds still chirped, the air was still fresh, but the energy on Maple Lane was different now, dense, unspoken, unsettled. For Jordan, life was quietly recalibrating. Since the confrontation with Susan, he'd noticed small things. The mailman gave him an extra nice nod. Carla waved more enthusiastically than usual. Even old Mr. Donner, who barely spoke, mumbled a mornin' while watering his begonias. Jordan appreciated these gestures, but he also knew what they meant. People were choosing sides. Not with flags or fists, but with glances and gossip, silence or support. The line wasn't in the sand, it was in the grass, running right across the neatly trimmed lawns of Maple Lane. Meanwhile, Susan was reeling, not just from embarrassment, but from something deeper. She'd spent years as the silent guardian of her street, the unofficial HO without a title, the kind of neighbor who knew the length of everyone's holiday lights and the timing of their sprinklers. She believed in order, tradition, and above all, control. And now, not only had her authority been questioned, it had been publicly corrected. Worse, some neighbors had started talking. "She's going too far lately," someone whispered at the dog park. "She called the cops?" "For mowing," said another, shaking her head. Susan's only remaining weapon was what she knew best: passive aggression. She doubled down. She stopped making eye contact with Jordan. She turned her back when he walked past. She filed a silent complaint with the city about noise violations during daytime hours. When a neighborhood kid's lemonade stand popped up next to Jordan's house, she called and asked if they had a permit. But Jordan saw through all of it, and he didn't flinch. Instead, he began doing something unexpected. He started gardening. Not just mowing, gardening. By Saturday, Jordan had pulled out weeds, tilled soil, and created beautiful raised flower beds along his walkway. Tulips, daffodils, marigolds, even a couple of fruit trees that he ordered online. Neighbors began to take notice. People slowed their walks to admire the color. Children pointed from strollers. And one afternoon, a middle-aged man named Mark, someone Jordan had only seen in passing, crossed the street to say, "Hey man, your yard's looking amazing. Makes mine look like a jungle." Jordan smiled. "Thanks. Gardening helps me think." Mark hesitated, then added, "Heard about what happened last week. That wasn't right. Just so you know, not all of us feel the way Susan does." Jordan nodded. "Appreciate that." That evening, Jordan opened a new tab on his laptop and searched Community Garden Grants, Missouri. A bold idea had begun to form. He didn't just want to beautify his lawn, he wanted to turn a negative into something everyone could benefit from. 3 blocks away, there was a vacant lot owned by the city. Overgrown and full of litter, it had become an eyesore. But Jordan saw potential. He drafted a proposal for a neighborhood garden, something local residents could build and maintain together. A space for kids, for seniors, for anyone who wanted to grow their own herbs or vegetables. It was a long shot. But sometimes, long shots land right in the center. Monday morning, Jordan submitted the application. By Friday, he received a call from City Hall. "Mr. Price, we reviewed your proposal for a community garden on the lot off Crestview Drive. It's very well written. The city's offering mini grants this quarter, and your project is a good candidate. Do you have any interest in presenting it to the Neighborhood Partnership Board?" Jordan almost laughed. Absolutely. That week, he began working on his pitch. Diagrams, photos, a detailed budget. He even printed flyers inviting neighbors to an info meeting at the local library. Word spread quickly. Carla shared it on social media. Mark texted a few folks. And even those who had stayed neutral during the lawnmower situation became curious. The day of the meeting, nearly 20 people showed up. Jordan stood at the front of the small conference room with a projector and a quiet smile. Behind him, a slideshow displayed images of community gardens from around the country. He began. "I moved to Oak Ridge 3 months ago because I wanted peace. A place where I could grow something, literally and figuratively. I never thought a lawnmower would turn into a neighborhood controversy. But maybe it was necessary. Because it opened a conversation we weren't having." People shifted in their seats. "I'm not here to dwell on what happened," he continued. "I'm here to talk about what we can do. Together. We have a vacant lot collecting trash when it could be producing food, flowers, and connection. I'm proposing we build something beautiful." He clicked through his slides, renderings of the garden, the layout, the proposed expenses. "The city's willing to match part of the funding. But I want this to be ours. Not mine. Ours." There was silence. Then, a hand raised. It was Mr. Donner. "What do you need from us?" Jordan smiled. "Volunteers. Donations. Ideas. Whatever you've got." By the end of the meeting, 12 people had signed up to help. 5 others promised to donate tools or soil. Carla offered to coordinate weekend work shifts. Even Linda, the Facebook group admin, said she'd run the official community communication. Back on Maple Lane, however, Susan stood at her window once again. She had heard about the meeting. She had seen the flyers. And she had watched, silently, as her neighborhood began to revolve around the man she had tried to paint as a problem. But something inside her, small and almost imperceptible, began to shift. Not regret. Not yet. But something close to discomfort. The following Saturday, Jordan was kneeling in his front yard, arranging flower beds, when a shadow crossed over him. He looked up. It was Susan. She was holding a pie. Cherry. I baked too much, she said, not meeting his eyes. Jordan stood up, wiping his hands on a towel. He didn't say anything. He simply waited. I saw the article in the Oak Ridge Gazette, she added quickly. About the garden project. That's very ambitious of you. Thank you, Jordan said. Still neutral. No anger. No invitation, either. Susan shifted. I suppose I may have been too quick to judge before. Suppose? Jordan echoed, softly. She nodded. I shouldn't have called. That day. I misunderstood. Jordan paused, then reached out and took the pie. Thank you for this. Their eyes met. No warm forgiveness. Not yet, but something civil. Something real. Susan turned and walked back across the street. Jordan went back to his flowers. The line in the grass? It was beginning to fade. Summer settled heavily over Oak Ridge, pressing warm fingers against the sidewalks and rooftops. But despite the heat, something remarkable was blooming, both in soil and spirit. Work on the Crestview Community Garden had officially begun. Every Saturday morning, Maple Lane residents gathered at the once-abandoned lot, now cleared of trash and tall weeds. Carla brought lemonade. Mark showed up early with a pickup full of mulch. Teenagers from the high school volunteered to build planter boxes, and retirees shared tips on irrigation. Children painted signs with names like Tomato Town, Herb Heaven, and Bloom Zone. And Jordan had become something of a quiet celebrity. Not because he asked for it, but because people respected what he was building literally and figuratively. He wasn't loud. He wasn't pushy. He just showed up every single time. Hammer in hand. Gloves on. Smile ready. Even Linda, the admin of the Facebook group, had posted a glowing message about the project. Who would have thought an empty lot could become the heart of our neighborhood? Huge thanks to Jordan Price for the vision, and to all the volunteers who are making this happen. But where some saw growth, others saw something else. One such person was Brian Nichols. Brian lived just 2 streets over, but had always considered himself one of the originals. He had a rugged jawline, arms like tree trunks, and a tendency to mutter about how things used to be when talking to his barbershop buddies. Brian didn't like change. He especially didn't like change he couldn't control. And now, every time he drove past Crestview Drive, he saw something that annoyed him. Jordan Price. Smiling, laughing with people Brian used to see as his neighbors. Earning praise. Becoming the face of a woke garden project, as Brian called it in a private text thread with a few like-minded buddies. One day, standing on the curb, he watched Jordan help a group of kids plant sunflower seeds. That guy shows up 3 months ago and now he runs the place, Brian muttered to himself. Unreal. His friend, Jake, shrugged. He ain't hittin' nobody. It's just plants, man. Brian didn't respond. But inside, something bitter took root. By mid-July, the community garden was thriving. The city granted an additional $2,000 in funding after a reporter from the Oak Ridge Weekly wrote a glowing front-page feature titled, Turning Soil and Stereotypes, One Man's Garden Grows More Than Vegetables. That article changed everything. Jordan became the unofficial face of the project. Invitations rolled in local podcasts, neighborhood associations, even a spot on the evening news. Most people celebrated. But Brian seethed. That night, as the sun dipped below the rooftops and cicadas hummed, Brian opened a private browser window and logged into an anonymous local forum, Midamo Voices. He started typing. Funny how someone moves into a nice neighborhood and suddenly starts playing hero. Some folks know how to manipulate sympathy and turn every little incident into a media circus. Keep your eyes open, folks. It didn't go viral, but a few replies trickled in. And that was enough fuel to feed his quiet resentment. 1 week later, a disturbing surprise awaited the garden crew. Jordan arrived early Saturday morning with a box of seedlings, basil, cilantro, and bell peppers. But as he turned the corner, he froze. The front entrance of the garden had been vandalized. Spray-painted across the wooden welcome sign were the words, "Stay in your lane." Someone had torn out several rows of tomato plants and snapped 2 young peach saplings clean in half. The irrigation hose had been slashed. Jordan dropped the box. Carla arrived moments later and gasped, "Oh my God." Other volunteers followed. Word spread fast. People stood silently, staring at the destruction. A few of the kids began to cry. Jordan felt a knot in his stomach, not just rage, but sorrow. He'd built this with love. With hands, sweat, hope. And someone had tried to poison it. Mark stormed in, fists clenched. "Who would do this?" "We should call the cops," said Linda. "This is a hate crime." Jordan took a breath, trying to stay composed. "Let's document everything first. Photos. Then we'll report it." He took out his phone and began recording. He captured every broken stalk, every vulgar message, every piece of evidence. By noon, the police had arrived. An officer named Rivera, respectful and thorough, took their statements. "We'll open an investigation," he said. "But it might be hard to trace without cameras." That's when Carla spoke up. "Actually, the library next door has one facing this way." Jordan's eyes lit up. "You're right." Rivera nodded. "We'll request the footage." By the next day, the vandal's identity was confirmed. It was Brian Nichols. Caught on tape. Spray can in hand. Baseball cap pulled low. Jordan watched the footage alone in his living room. No shock. No vindication. Just disappointment. He had hoped the worst was behind them. Apparently, the roots of prejudice ran deeper. Monday morning, Oak Ridge buzzed again. This time with fury. Brian's name had made it to the Facebook group. Not because Jordan posted it, but because Officer Rivera had confirmed the incident and someone had leaked it. Reactions poured in. "Unacceptable behavior. We do not tolerate this. He doesn't represent us. Press charges, Jordan." Brian, meanwhile, posted a single message on his personal page. "People can't take a joke anymore. This place is soft now." The community didn't laugh. Jordan met with the police again. He chose not to press criminal charges, but he did file a restraining order and requested the city fine Brian for property damage. The city complied. Then, quietly and without drama, Jordan returned to the garden. And so did everyone else. They cleaned, replanted, painted over the graffiti. But this time, something had changed. This wasn't just a garden anymore. It was a symbol of resistance, of unity, of dignity. And Jordan, whether he wanted the title or not, had become its steward. Later that week, Susan knocked on his door again. "I heard what happened," she said, holding a tray of seedlings. Jordan opened the door, tired but smiling faintly. "I thought these might help," she added. "He doesn't speak for us. I just wanted you to know." Jordan looked at the tray. "Thank you," he said. And this time, he meant it. By the end of August, the Crestview Community Garden had not only recovered, it had flourished. Peach saplings had been replaced. Tomatoes now stood tall in raised beds lined with fresh compost. Bees buzzed gently between rows of lavender and basil. What was once a forgotten lot had become a beacon, a living testament to what a united neighborhood could accomplish. But while the garden bloomed, something more fragile was also trying to grow: reconciliation. Susan Miller, once the unofficial self-appointed enforcer of Maple Lane, had begun a quiet transformation. It didn't happen overnight. It wasn't prompted by a single revelation. Rather, it came like slow rain, irritating at first, but eventually cleansing. The vandalism had shaken her. Brian Nichols wasn't just a neighbor, he'd been someone she shared small talk with, someone she once asked to fix a leaky hose bib. But seeing his name on the front page, knowing his actions targeted Jordan, it forced Susan to look inward. She realized how easily silence could be mistaken for complicity. And that made her think about her own silence. About that day with the lawnmower. About the way she had yelled. About how she dialed 911 not out of fear, but out of judgment. That memory haunted her now because she knew what it looked like. What it was. One morning, as summer began giving way to early September, Susan received a letter. It came not in the mail, but slipped under her door. The return address? Oak Ridge Town Council. She opened it and read, "You are cordially invited to attend the Oak Ridge Annual Community Forum at City Hall on September 10th. This forum is an open platform for residents to address neighborhood concerns and share community-building efforts. Given recent events on Maple Lane and the success of the Crestview Garden project, your voice would be appreciated." It was unsigned. She stared at it for a long moment. This wasn't a demand, but it felt like one. This wasn't a trap, but it felt like a mirror. Susan hadn't been to a public town meeting in years. The thought of speaking, really speaking, made her heart pound. She didn't sleep that night. But when September 10th arrived, she got dressed, combed her hair, and drove to City Hall. The auditorium was modest, filled with about 60 folding chairs. Most were taken. Jordan sat near the front, flanked by Carla and Mark. The mayor, an affable woman named Sandra Weller, stood at the podium. The theme of the forum was moving forward together. Residents took turns sharing updates, road improvements, school fundraisers, a proposal for a new bike path. Then Sandra stepped forward again. "We'd like to conclude tonight with a brief open forum. If anyone would like to speak about neighborhood unity, the floor is yours." Susan felt her throat tighten. She stood. Gasps weren't audible, but the energy in the room shifted like a ripple in a pond. All eyes turned. She walked slowly to the microphone, took a breath, and spoke. "Good evening. My name is Susan Miller. I've lived on Maple Lane for 27 years. Some of you know me. Some of you may know me for the wrong reasons." Silence. "A few months ago, I made a mistake. A big one. I called the police on my neighbor, Jordan Price. He was mowing his lawn. That's all he was doing. But I let fear, bias, and pride cloud my judgment." She paused. "I told myself I was protecting my neighborhood. But the truth is, I was protecting my comfort, my control. And I'm ashamed of that." Some gasps this time. Real ones. Since then, I've watched Jordan not just forgive, but lead. He's done more for this community in 3 months than I have in 3 decades. The garden he built with all of you, it's beautiful. But what's even more beautiful is the way you've supported it. And him. Susan's hands trembled slightly. She gripped the edges of the podium. "I can't erase what I did, but I can acknowledge it. I can say it out loud. Because maybe someone else out there is holding on to the same kind of fear. And maybe hearing me admit it will help them let go." She looked toward Jordan. Their eyes met. "Mr. Price. Jordan, I am deeply sorry. For judging you. For doubting you. For not seeing you clearly. I hope that one day, you'll consider forgiving me. But whether you do or not, I will keep showing up to be better." Silence. A moment of stillness so thick it held the room like glue. Then came the sound of hands clapping. Softly at first. One person. Then another. Then another. Within seconds, the entire room stood, applauding not because they excused her actions, but because they respected her honesty. Susan stepped down, tears in her eyes. Jordan rose quietly and approached her. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. He extended his hand. She took it. The applause grew louder. Later that night, under the soft glow of streetlights, Jordan walked Susan home. "Why now?" he asked. "I saw what hate looked like," she said. "And I realized I'd been feeding a smaller version of it for years." Jordan nodded. "I meant what I said," she added, "about wanting to do better. If you ever need help with the garden or anything else, just knock." "I will," Jordan replied. They stopped in front of her porch. The breeze was light. The air smelled of turned soil and September leaves. "Good night, Jordan." "Good night, Susan." She turned to go, and for the first time in months, Jordan felt something lift from the air between their houses. Not perfection, but possibility. Autumn rolled into Oakridge like a quiet song. Leaves turned from green to gold, sidewalks filled with crunchy echoes, and the late sun painted the Crestview Community Garden in warm, honey-colored light. What began as a barren lot had become a local landmark. Visitors came from other neighborhoods just to walk the rows of herbs and vegetables. Elderly couples sat on the benches in the evenings. Teenagers took prom photos under the archway of vines. And every Thursday, Jordan hosted a free plant and learn workshop for kids. But it was more than beauty that the garden produced now. It had yielded change. Real change. Susan now came every Saturday morning, gloves on, smile ready. Carla had designed a mural wall where kids could paint vegetables and flowers. Mark had even written a short book titled Rooted Together, How a Neighborhood Grew One Garden and One Another, which sold out at the local bookstore in just 3 days. The town buzzed with pride. So much so that Mayor Weller invited the Crestview Garden team to organize a fall harvest festival, an annual event that had died out years ago but now had a chance at revival. Jordan hesitated at first. He had never wanted attention. He wasn't looking for awards or microphones. But Carla said it best. "This is bigger than you now, Jordan. This is for everyone." And so, plans began. There would be booths, apple cider, crafts, live music, pie baking contests, and even a vegetable costume parade for kids. The date was set, October 21st. Excitement built like electricity in the air. But as the festival approached, so did a quiet threat. 1 week before the event, an email landed in Jordan's inbox. The subject line read, "Notice of Zoning Review, Parcel #1129C." He opened it, his brow furrowed. It was from City Hall. A legal notice. Dry language, but one sentence stood out like thunder in a clear sky. Due to rezoning considerations for parcel #1129C, the city may reclaim the lot currently used as the Crestview Community Garden, pending developer interest. Jordan read it twice. Then a third time. The city was planning to possibly sell the garden land. To developers. For condos. He sat back in his chair, silent. The walls felt like they were pressing in. After everything. A neighborhood meeting was held that evening. Jordan explained the situation. There were gasps, groans, then a wave of determined silence. Carla slammed her hands on the table. "They can't just take it." Susan stood up. "I'll call the local paper. They owe us a platform." Mark pulled out his phone. "I'll set up a petition." "And Jordan?" He looked around at all of them, faces once skeptical, now fierce and loyal. He nodded. "We'll fight this. Not with anger, but with purpose." Within 48 hours, the petition had over 3,000 signatures. Social media exploded with posts under the #SaveCrestviewGarden. Local news stations picked up the story. A feature ran with the headline, "The Garden They Tried to Erase. Oakridge Neighbors Rally Against City Plan." Jordan appeared on a radio show. Carla organized a peaceful march. And Susan, once seen as a villain, gave an impassioned speech in front of City Hall, holding a hand-painted sign that read, "I was wrong. This garden made me right." The night before the festival, Jordan barely slept. Would this be their final celebration? Would they have to say goodbye to the very soil they'd tilled with their hearts? He didn't know. But he knew one thing. They wouldn't go down quietly. October 21st. The fall harvest festival bloomed like a second spring. Pumpkins lined the walkways. Children in carrot and squash costumes laughed and ran between booths. A string quartet played acoustic covers of Motown classics. The smell of cinnamon, earth, and apple filled the air. And at the center of it all was Jordan, wearing a shirt that read, "Planted in hope, grown in unity." At noon, Mayor Weller took the stage. The crowd gathered, some nervous, some furious. The mayor tapped the microphone. "Thank you all for coming. Before we continue with today's celebration, I have an announcement." Jordan held his breath. "So many of you have spoken up, called, written, protested. And after reviewing your petition and hearing your voices, we've come to a decision." She smiled. "The Crestview Community Garden will stay." The crowd erupted. Cheers. Applause. Tears. "We're not selling," she continued. "In fact, we're drafting a resolution to make this land a permanent community green space. Your passion reminded us what this garden truly means. It's more than plants. It's purpose." Jordan's shoulders slumped with relief. People hugged. Some cried. Susan grabbed Jordan's hand. "I haven't felt this proud since my daughter graduated." Carla burst into tears and shouted, "Let's dance." And so they did. All of them. Neighbors who once lived behind fences, now linked by something stronger than roots. That night, long after the booths were packed up and the kids had gone home, Jordan stood alone in the garden. The wind rustled the leaves. He walked to the center of the plot, where a peach sapling stood tall, planted again after the vandalism, now stronger than ever. He crouched beside it, ran his hand through the soil, and whispered, "Thank you." Not to the plant, but to the journey. Because what started as an accusation, a lawnmower, a misunderstanding, had turned into something far more powerful. A neighborhood reborn, a community unbroken, a man judged by the color of his skin, now known for the content of his character, and a garden that changed everything,